Good morning, ladies, or good afternoon, I should say. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and get started with our question review on ecology. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. So today we're going to start doing some, just got a few questions that will highlight some of the material that is in the ecology section of the biology course, and hopefully this corresponds with what Ms. Tyson covered on Tuesday. So first thing is about the energy pyramid. So this first question asks, or it first gives you some background. It tells you that a team of ecologists observed the feeding patterns of several populations in the desert. The energy pyramid shown below depicts those feeding patterns that the ecologists observed. So we have a desert energy pyramid, and it shows you some of the different organisms at each level, or each trophic level of the energy pyramid. And the question asks us, which of the following best explains the difference in the amount of energy that's available in the trophic levels of the desert ecosystem? So would it be A, there is less energy available in the producers because their tissues are less dense than those at higher levels? B, there is more energy available in the second trophic level because less energy is needed for hunting compared to the higher trophic levels? C, there is more available energy in the birds of prey because they have greater muscle mass for storing energy than organisms in lower trophic levels? Or D, there is less energy in the fourth trophic level because of the loss of energy through metabolism each of the lower trophic levels? And you all are very correct. You got that very quickly, which is excellent. D is the correct answer. So let me just kind of circle that there. Yep, D is the correct answer because as we move through the pyramids, as we move through a food web or food chain, those trophic levels further away from the sun are going to have less and less energy available to them for use because of the methods in which the energy is transferred. So let's just take a look at our next slide to kind of show that. So we got here, you can see at the producer level, there's approximately 1,000 kilocalories of energy. And then if we move up 100 kilocalories, this is the first trophic level, so these are the primary consumers. And then we have the secondary consumers, only 10 kilocalories. And then we have the tertiary consumers with 1. So as you can see, only 10% of the energy gets passed from one level to the next because the rest of it is used up in that transfer process. It's also used up in the metabolism of the organism, and some of it is just given off as heat, which is not a usable form of energy for these organisms. All right. Here's another one that talks about energy transfer in food webs. So this one says, which of the following correctly traces the energy transfer through the trophic levels in this marine food web shown? So which of these food chains would be a correct depiction of what is seen in this marine food web as to the flow that it goes through? All right, we look like we've got one of you saying B, and B is the correct answer. Because remember, we have to start at the producer level, so that would be our phytoplankton, and we're going to follow the arrows up. So phytoplankton, in this case, can go to the krill, which is our primary consumer, and then it would go to the fish, which is going to be the secondary consumer, and then the seal would be the tertiary consumer in this particular chain. Okay, A cannot be correct because fish is not a producer, so it's not going to be the start of our food chain. So that one's not going to be correct. Seal is also not correct because, again, that's at the very top, so it's not going to be the start. We don't start at the top and work our way down. Then D is not correct because if you look, zooplankton is actually going to be above the phytoplankton. So that's not correct either because we would go from phytoplankton to zooplankton, not the other way around. Okay? Any questions on that one? Mhm. All right. Remember, you feel free to, if you have questions along the way, so you can stop me, raise your hand, put a text in the chat box, or you can even talk if you want on the microphone on your talk button. That's fine as well. So here's just another example showing us the different trophic levels and what we can see in the trophic levels. Again, the producers are going to be at the bottom. Then you've got your primary consumers, which are usually herbivores because they are going to be eating plants only. Not always the case, depending on the food web. We might have some carnivores in there that just chose to eat the producer first, because as you know, humans will actually eat both plants and animals. So we could be the primary consumer in one case. Secondary consumers are always going to be your carnivores because they will have to have eaten another consumer to be there. And then tertiary are going to also be carnivores, okay? Now they may be omnivores as well, so I should put an asterisk there. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. However, if they are at the secondary or tertiary level in that particular chain or web, then at that point in time they must have been a carnivore. And so here's just showing you a food chain, a very simple food chain. Starting again, we start with the sun, and then it goes to the producer, primary consumer, secondary, and then tertiary. Okay? And also, one thing I want to mention while we're here is not only is the amount of energy that's available going to decrease as we move up, but the biomass, the amount of the organisms in that particular ecosystem for those different levels decrease as well. So your majority, your largest number of organisms are going to be at the producer level, and as we move up, that gets less and less and less because of, again, the ability to be able to support those is going to be harder and harder as that energy amount is going to decrease. All right, so here's another question we have. Which of the following describes how an abiotic factor can impact the population dynamics in an ecosystem? So abiotic, is it going to be a parasite that invades a host, can reproduce and cause a decline in the host species population? Or would B be correct? Organisms that compete for the same resources will keep each other from overpopulating. C, predators will prevent herbivores from depleting the plants and other resources in an ecosystem. Or D, seasonal variations in temperature can cause some of the individuals in a population to die. So which of those is going to represent or describe an abiotic factor impacting the population? Good. Very good. D is the correct answer here because we need to remember that the prefix A means without, and then bio means life. So we have without life. So an abiotic factor is a non-living factor. So anything that is not living that's going to affect the ecosystem. And so in the first three, you've got living things affecting other living things. A parasite would be a living thing. Organisms both competing would be two living things. And then predators with herbivores would be another living thing. So the only one that was representing an abiotic was D. So here's just a chart comparing those abiotic and biotic. Remember that biotic, again, are living. Abiotic are non-living. So examples of biotic would be plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, and any abiotic would be things like water, sunlight, soil, air, temperature, humidity, those types of things. Any questions on that? No? All right. I think this is our last one, well, one or two more, I think, questions. So this one is about, let's see, it's about invasive species. So here we go. If a snake species were introduced to an ecosystem where it had no natural predators, what long-term effect do you predict the snakes would have on the population dynamics of that ecosystem? Would have A, they would breed with native snake species, resulting in an increase in biodiversity in the ecosystem. B, they would compete with native snake species for resources, causing a decline in native snake populations and possibly extinction. C, would they form mutualistic relationships with native snakes since they would occupy the same niche in the ecosystem? Or D, would they serve as a food source for predators of native snakes, causing an increase in native snake populations? Very good, yes. It would definitely be B, invasive species that are not native to an ecosystem and that do not have any known natural predators in that ecosystem are most likely going to be able to overpopulate, and since they will end up competing with the native species in that area for the resources, it usually can cause the native species to decline or go extinct, because the native species are going to have predators or in the area. So when they are at, a disadvantage, it's going to be easier for them to be killed, whereas the non-native doesn't have any predators, so they are going to be able to flourish. So these are some of the negative effects that we see with invasive species. They do not usually provide food for any other predator or for any other predator in the ecosystem. They will usually outcompete the native species for the resources, including food and habitat, so space as well as food. They explode in population because they don't have anything hunting them and keeping them in check, their population in check. And they are usually a threat to our ecosystem's economy or society. So, and that is because they are harming the other organisms in the ecosystem, or possibly even harming movement of traffic and things like that, as can be seen with the hydrilla. So these are actually 3 species that are found in Florida that are non-native. You have the lionfish off the coast, Atlantic coast of Florida, and the lionfish is something that has taken over many fish populations in our oceans right off our coast. The Burmese python is in the Everglades and is affecting the ecosystem there in many ways. It's even affecting our alligator population, because there are some Burmese pythons that are large enough to actually kill some alligators. And then the hydrilla is a plant species, and this species is invasive as well in our waterways, and become problems with boats trying to get through different waterways, as well as other organisms living in that area. It blocks out the sunlight and things like that. So those are some examples. So any questions on invasive species? All right. Well, that is all the questions that I could find on the practice test from the state on the ecology, although ecology does tend to make up quite a big portion of the EOC. So is there any questions you guys had on anything else that Ms. Tyson covered that maybe I didn't touch on in these questions that you might want any more clarification on? No? All right. You're good? Okay. Well, I thank you guys for joining me. It was short and sweet today. Next week is the last week, and it will be on the human body. Some of the review for Ms. Tyson will be human body, so the question review will go along with that. And that will be the last one, and then you guys should be good to go for your EOC. I do appreciate y'all joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.